All right, so the last one we're going to look at in 4.4 is really just putting things together and then solving an equation by factoring. So if you look at example 5, we have the only thing that's different is that it's equal to 0. So we can simply use the zero product property. If we can factor it, we can use the zero product property to finish and solve it. So if you have a problem like this, first of all, if you have a problem that's not in standard form or it's not all equal to 0, you'd want to put that problem equal to 0 and collect your terms. This one's already like that, so we're going to go ahead and factor this first. And again, the factoring process, if we're going to take this and factor it, is we still want to think about, is there something that we can take out there first? So we go through that, and there's nothing that you can pull out here first. So we're going to go ahead and do the 2 parentheses method. All right, so we're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing for the last like 2 or 3 days. Factor that trinomial. You can do the snowflake method. Try that again. And we do the same thing. My A value is 4. My A times C value is going to be negative 60. And my B value is negative 17. I want to think about what multiplies up to negative 60 and adds up to negative 17. So you think about what multiplies up to negative 60. Well, there's a lot there. Let me just think about 60. So 6 times 10, 12 and 5, 20 and 3, multiply up to 60. So actually, the thing that's going to work here is 20 and 3. So if I take 20 times 3, that's 60. One of them thus has to be negative. So I'm going to say negative 20 times 3 is negative 60. And negative 20 plus 3 is negative 17. So there's our correct factoring. This one is already a reduced column. This one's not yet, so we have to reduce that. So 4 over negative 20, if we divide everything by 4, we can make this a 1 over negative 5. And there's our reduced column there. So we can go ahead and put these into our parentheses now. We have 1x minus 5. And we also have 4x plus 3. And this equals 0. So there's my correct factoring. And so that was just like what we've been doing all along. Now to finish the problem, we can just use the zero product property, which says if I have something times something and that equals 0, then I can set each one of these individual factors equal to 0. So I can set x minus 5 equal to 0. That has to be true. Or it has to be true that 4x plus 3 is 0. One of those has to be, because if I'm multiplying and my answer is 0, then whatever I'm multiplying by, one of those has to be 0. So the x minus 5 equals 0. That's going to give us an answer of x equals 5 as an answer. And then over here, if I subtract 3 from both sides, 4x equals negative 3. And then I divide everything by 4. So divide by 4, divide by 4. Then my other answer is negative 3/4. So I get two answers here. One is x equals 5, and the other is x equals negative 3/4. All right, so here's some practice problems. These are actually homework problems, number 2, A and B. You can give these a try, and I will go over them. Okay, so part A, the way to do part A is you have to factor this. That is a difference of 2 squares if you noticed. You didn't have to do it like that, but we would have 9x squared plus 0x minus 16, and we would factor this. We'd factor that. We could use the snowflake method, where this is 9 and 9. We're going to add up to 0, and then we have to add up to 9 times 16, which is 144, or negative 144. The two factors that you get then are 12 and negative 12. And then you would have to reduce these columns by dividing everything by 3. So you get a 3 and a 4 here, 3 and a negative 4 here. So this would factor to 3x plus 4, 3x minus 4. Then you'd have to solve that. You'd have to solve this by setting them equal to 0. So 3x plus 4 equals 0. And then 3x minus 4 equals 0. And so this one would become x equals negative 4/3. This one would become positive 4/3. Two answers there are plus or minus 4/3. For the next one, for B, again, there's nothing to factor out here. So I'm going to start with 2 parentheses. And I'm going to go ahead and do the snowflake method somewhere. Do it down here. So I put in A and A, which is 2 and 2. My B value is negative 3. A times C is negative 18. I want to think about what multiplies up to negative 18 and adds to negative 3. So that's going to be 6 times 3 is 18. One of those has to be negative, so I'm going to make that a negative 6. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18, and if I add those, I get negative 3. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and reduce my columns. That one's already set, ready to go. This one can be reduced down to negative 1/3, and then that one's ready to go. So I put that as my factors. So 1x minus 3 is this first one. 2x plus 3 is my other one. So that would be step 1, and that's really most of the problem, is just figuring out how to factor it. And then we're going to set these both equal to 0 to get the actual answers. So I have x minus 3 equals 0. And I have 2x plus 3 equals 0. And if I solve those, I get x equals 3 as one answer. And over here, I get x equals, I would subtract 3, and then I divide that by 2. So I get x equals negative 3/2.